The first and leading cause of depression that we'll look at is inflammation in the brain, and you need to know how to fix it. Let me explain how. Imagine your brain as a grand castle. When it senses danger, like an infection or an injury, it goes into lockdown, raising the alarm and activating the immune system. This response, called neuroinflammation, is actually protective in the right context. But to understand why this makes you feel depressed, let's back up and pretend you have a puppy. We'll call him Max. Usually full of boundless energy, one day Max seems under the weather. He's lethargic, avoiding treats, and sleeping all day. Now, when our pets act like this, we know that they're unwell. This is what scientists refer to as sickness behavior. It's thought that animals in the wild do this to conserve energy so that their bodies can heal. But now you're probably asking, Elliot, what has this got to do with depression? Well, it turns out that scientists have found many interesting parallels between sickness behavior in animals and depression in humans. It just so happens that studies show people with depression often have high levels of pro-inflammatory markers, similar to those found in sick animals. Furthermore, treatments that reduce inflammation oftentimes improve depressive symptoms. Many antidepressant drugs actually have a strong anti-inflammatory effect on the brain, and some scientists believe that this is the main mechanism of action. In other words, the drugs don't fix a chemical imbalance, they just calm down the brain's alarm system. Based on this theory, human depression is a protective, adaptive response to chronic sickness. In other words, to fix depression, you have to fix the original causes of inflammation. But the question is, what are those things? One of those is a damaged gut. Going back to the analogy of the castle, like cracks in the castle walls letting invaders in, a leaky gut, also called intestinal permeability, allows harmful substances from the GI tract into the bloodstream, which can then trigger your brain's immune system. So if you have issues with your gut, then fixing that should be your number one top priority. And whilst there are many detailed ways by which someone can go about doing this, like I describe in this video, the first thing you should be doing is cleaning up your diet. And if you only remove one single thing, then that should be industrial seed oils. Not only is it going to destroy your gut, but the high level of omega-6 fats found in these oils are going to make your brain inflamed. But there's actually another reason why you need to ditch the processed foods, which you might not have considered. They are absolutely loaded with environmental toxins, which is another cause of your inflamed brain. A brand new study in over 3,000 people found that those with depression were much more likely to have higher levels of certain toxins floating in their bloodstream. And what was the way that these toxic chemicals likely cause depression? You guessed it, by triggering inflammation. So these things can be persistent organic pollutants, PFAs, heavy metals, microplastics, any other kind of toxic fume that you can imagine. Aside from sticking to unprocessed organic foods, you can reduce your exposure through switching to filtered or distilled water and ditching the plastic bottles. However, you also need to actively support your body's ability to get rid of what it has stored. For this, you should be starting regular habits which improve your detoxification system. These include sauna, Epsom salt baths, and intensive exercise to increase the rate at which you sweat. There are also many supplements which can speed up detoxification, which I discuss in these videos. Now, if you're looking for some shortcuts, then consider checking out the nutrients and supplements that I explore in this video as well. And this brings us to the second most common cause of depression. These are nutritional deficiencies, which most of you probably have. Whether your brain is inflamed or not, if it doesn't have the right tools, your mood will go down the drain. To understand this, I want you to imagine your brain as though it was a car's engine. Now, whether it barely scratches by like an old rundown Nissan Micra or growls like a superpower Ferrari depends on the supply of nutrients that you provide it with. For the car to actually burn the fuel and make the engine run, it requires spark plugs. Now, in the brain, the equivalent of spark plugs are going to be the micronutrients, being vitamins and minerals. Without enough of these vitamins and minerals, you can't make energy, and if your brain doesn't have enough energy, it doesn't work as it should. One of the effects of this is depression. Research shows that deficiencies in B1, vitamin B3, zinc, magnesium, among many other nutrients, can all result in a depressive mood. The fix for this is really quite simple. Cut the processed food, increase your intake of naturally raised animal foods, and watch the rest fall into place. There's also no harm in taking a multi-B complex just to make sure you're hitting all of those bases. But to further this analogy, your brain engine also needs to be heavily lubricated, otherwise it gets clogged up. Omega-3 fatty acids play a similar role in the brain. They help to maintain the health of cell membranes, myelin sheath, and support overall brain function. So just as you wouldn't run a car without oil, you need to ensure your diet includes an adequate supply of omega-3 fatty acids for optimal brain health. If you eat 1 to 2 servings of fatty fish per week, this should go a long way towards improving your status. And just to take this analogy one step further, all of the many intricate moving parts of the engine needs to be tuned and tightly controlled for optimal performance. The system responsible for this in the car engine is the engine control unit. In the brain, this can be likened to the process of methylation. Methylation is involved in regulating the balance of neurotransmitters, DNA repair, and detoxification. And impaired methylation is one of the driving causes of depression. Deficiencies in vitamin B12, folate, choline, and vitamin B6 can all impair this process. Problems with methylation result in an imbalance in the synthesis of serotonin, dopamine, and noradrenaline, all of which are neurochemicals which affect the way that you feel. It can also impair the hormonal balance in the brain. So aside from frank deficiencies in those nutrients, genetic predisposition such as MTHFR or other genes which are involved in the methylation process, these can increase the demand for certain nutrients. What this speaks to is optimizing your nutritional status across the board and making sure that you have all of the above nutrients dialed in correctly. Like I said before, oftentimes a well-formulated B complex should suffice. However, the addition of creatine and/or choline usually does the trick for most people. And if we come back to the car engine again, one last time, we know that it needs fuel, we know that it needs lubrication, and we also know that it needs to be controlled by a central unit. However, even the best maintained engine requires regular servicing to keep it in top shape, and your brain is the same. This is where sleep hygiene comes in. See, sleep essentially acts as a service checkup for your brain. Quality sleep is essential for repairing and regenerating brain cells, ensuring optimal neurological function and hormonal balance, and getting rid of what isn't needed. Without regular maintenance, a car engine is much more likely to break down and wear out. Likewise, poor sleep hygiene is strongly associated with cognitive decline, mood disorders, and depression. This means that prioritizing sleep is one of the best things that you can do in combating depression. Easy ways to address this are to keep a consistent 24-hour cycle. This means choose a bedtime and choose a wake-up time and stick to it. Next, you want to try and block out blue light at nighttime, ideally using blue blocking glasses, and get as much natural light in the morning time as possible, ideally 30 minutes or more. Now, you want to try and time meals away from bedtime. So no eating 3 to 4 hours before going to sleep, and ideally eating breakfast within 1 hour of waking up. Same applies to caffeine. If you're going to consume caffeine, do it in the morning time, not in the afternoon, as that can delay your sleep cycle. So remember, just like a well-maintained car needs regular checkups, your brain needs consistent sleep hygiene. So to conclude, hidden causes of depression include neuroinflammation, which can be caused by many different things. Nutritional deficiencies, methylation imbalances, which can be caused by nutritional deficiencies, or it can be because of underlying genetic predispositions, and finally, imbalanced circadian rhythm and poor sleep hygiene. If you get all of these things in check, chances are you're probably not going to be depressed. I hope you liked this video and found it helpful. See you next time. Your immune system can cause you to become clinically depressed.